Tag, you're it. The franchise tag window is now open, but will the Raiders be players this year? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 20th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, that's awesome. We appreciate that. The show has grown in a major way because of you, Raider Nation, of course, because of my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, making sure we're looking good and we're sounding good. At Ari Produces on Twitter. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. We'll get a lot of calls and texts, as much feedback as possible. Coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. Segment number 2, going to talk about free agency. Going to talk about Raiders free agents and talk about outside free agents as the franchise tag window has officially opened up today, and it'll run through March 5th. So we'll take a look at the Raider free agents, and we'll take a look around the league at some free agents that I think the Raiders should be or could be interested in. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as we do on the daily, and we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So here we go. Franchise tag window is now open through March 5th. NFL teams could designate franchise or transition players. So they don't have to designate these players as a franchise tag player immediately, but they could start applying the tag right now. And as we remember in 2023, Josh Jacobs was the franchise tag holder for the silver and black. Now, if the Raiders were to go in that direction, they have 17 free agents. If they were to go in that direction again, he's the only guy that I could see being a potential franchise tag player that they actually, apply that tag onto. But because he actually got $11.7 million on his contract last season, he got a little bit of a raise. His franchise tag would be closer to $14 million. So I don't really see that happening. But he is a player that the Raiders could franchise tag. The rest of the guys that are on the 17 free agent list, I don't see him as potentials that the Raiders would actually want to go ahead and apply the franchise tag, which is a good thing. I think that that's really good. They have some guys that they could bring back, and we'll talk about those later on in the show, but not to have to be stuck with a guy that hey, you got to make sure you keep this guy, got to hold on to this guy. I think that's a really good thing. But I did want to pass along a couple notes about other potential franchise tag players, and I can go through the matter of fact, the money that is out there, what the guaranteed contract will be for some of these players. But a couple quick notes, and this pertains to the Raiders because folks have talked about Kirk Cousins being potentially the Raiders quarterback in 2024. Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins cannot be franchise tagged, so he's scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent next month. He cannot be. So he's going to go probably to the highest bidder, whether that's Atlanta, whether that's back to Minnesota. There's other teams that are out there. Of course, the Raiders have been mentioned. I'm not a Kirk Cousins guy, but he will be an unrestricted free agent. There is no franchise tag for him. Also, Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans, due to his 2023 cap number, his projected franchise tag would be $28.4 million for a wide receiver instead of the regular $21.6 million. So he's not going to get hit with the franchise tag. Now, Tampa Bay, I think they still want to bring him back, but it's a large amount of money for a team that, they're not too sure exactly what direction they're going to go in, even though they made the playoffs in 2023. So don't expect to see Mike Evans hit with that franchise tag. 28.4 for a wide receiver is a lot of money. Also, another guy that I know a lot of Raider fans have talked about, Chiefs defensive lineman Chris Jones, due to his 2023 cap number, his projected franchise tag would be $32 million. That's a one-year, fully guaranteed deal instead of the regular $19.7 million, making him unlikely a tag candidate. Now, at the parade, Chris Jones said he's coming back for the next 3 years. His agent quickly said, take the alcohol away from these players, and so the negotiations will go on. I know the Chiefs want to bring back Chris Jones, but will they be able to bring him back? That's another question, but that's a huge amount of money for a franchise tag at the defensive line position, $32 million, and that's due to his 2023 cap number. So let me go over some of these real quick. And these are just estimates. These aren't guaranteed exactly how much the franchise would be. But linebacker, approximately $22.8 million. Remember, these are all one-year deals, fully guaranteed. Linebacker, $22.8 million. So like a guy like Josh Allen out there in Jacksonville, he could be hit with the franchise tag. Running back, about $11.3 million. So a Saquon Barkley, maybe the Giants hit him with a franchise tag again. Defensive end Brian Burns, he could possibly go for about $20.2 million. Again, approximate numbers when it comes to the franchise tag. Safety, $16.2 million. So a guy like Kyle Duggar, he might be able to make that on a one-year fully guaranteed deal. Wide receiver T. Higgins, about $20.7 million, even though it's looking like it's probably going to be closer to 21.6, but 20.7 is kind of the estimation. Talked about the running back already. Cornerbacks, potentially about $18.8 million. So a guy like Jalen Johnson in Chicago, he can get hit with that. Defensive tackle, $20.9. A dude like Justin Matabuke out of Baltimore, he was probably going to get hit with that. Quarterback, $36.3 million for the franchise tag. And, well, there's not too many quarterbacks that are available. Baker Mayfield's going to be the one that everyone's paying attention to. Again, I mentioned wide receiver already. Defensive tackle, mentioned them already. Safety, mentioned them already. Offensive tackle, didn't get to them. $19.9 million. Problem is there's not a lot of offensive tackles that are potential free agents that you'd want to hit with the franchise tag. So those are some of the numbers right there. Again, just estimates when it comes to the one-year fully guaranteed deal when it looks at the franchise tag. But that window is officially open. And again, I don't see any Raiders that are going to get hit this year with the franchise tag. Now, on Monday, I should have added we were going over the coaches, the assistant coaches that the Raiders are at, and I should have added this one. It comes from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. He tweeted out the Raiders expected to name Fred Walker an assistant quarterback coach. Vegas didn't retain many offensive coaches, but it keeps Walker, who was an offensive assistant for the team the last 2 seasons. So it looks like Fred Walker is going to be an assistant quarterbacks coach. I mentioned on Monday the running back coach is going to be Carnell Cadillac Williams. He was the interim head coach at Auburn in 2022, associate head coach and running back coach at Auburn in 2023. Of course, played in the league for a handful of years. Really good. And the quarterback coach looks like it's going to be Rich Scangarello, but it's not been named official yet. And Jeremy Fowler says that they're leaning towards him being the quarterback coach. He's the front runner for that. So nothing's official when it comes to the quarterback coach for the Silver and Black. But I did want to update the assistant quarterback coach, Fred Walker, who's been on the staff for a couple years, is going to stick around with the Silver and Black. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, kind of news and notes collected on Monday, President's Day. Coming up in segment number 2, we're going to talk about free agents with the Raiders, 5 guys that I think that the Raiders should hold on to, and 5 guys from outside of the organization that I think that the Raiders should pay attention to and look at. Some might not be available because they get hit with the franchise tag, but if I'm the Silver and Black and I'm their front office, these are the guys that I'll be looking at. That's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. And you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, anything that's near you, they've got you. They got great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time will take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, you can see the view from your seat before you actually buy them, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front. You know you're getting a great deal before you go to checkout, and you can buy tickets in seconds. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find all your last-minute seats. Right now, what you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and promo code LOCKEDON. It's all one word, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to look at Raider free agents and also some potential free agents that the Raiders could be interested in as the free agent tag window or the franchise tag window officially opens up today. And I'll go over it really quickly as far as Raiders in-house free agents because, again, there's 17 of them, but there's not a whole lot that I look at and say, man, you've got to make sure you bring that guy back. So real quick, Josh Jacobs, Bilal Nichols, defensive tackle, center Andre James, guard and tackle Jermaine Illuminor, tight end Austin Hooper, running back Amir Abdullah, Guard Greg Van Roten, Adam Butler, defensive tackle, DeAndre Carter, kick returner, also wide receiver, John Jenkins, defensive tackle, Jesper Horsted, tight end, Brandon Parker, offensive tackle, Jakob Johnson, the fullback, Curtis Bolton, the linebacker, Amik Robertson, cornerback, Isaiah Palomau, safety, and Jordan Meredith, the guard. So those are the 17 guys, and I know that none of those names popped off to you like, oh my gosh, you got to hold on to that. Josh Jacobs was really my guy. And we all know that the economics that go into it, if it wasn't for the money, I would say there's no doubt about it that Josh Jacobs is coming back. But he made $11.7 million last season. A franchise tag would be about $14 million. They're obviously not going to pay that. I'm hoping that AP can get Josh Jacobs to come to some kind of middle even where he's not looking for break the bank type money. But at the same time, I say it all the time, I don't count these guys' money, and I don't blame them for getting every penny they can get. So if Josh Jacobs can get big time premium money for some kind of organization around the league, not mad at him at all. Hopefully he returns, but I just about guarantee they will not hit him with the franchise tag because $14.7 million is a lot of money for a running back for 1 year guaranteed. Other guys that I'd be interested in them bringing back, Jermaine Illuminor. He's not fantastic, but he's steady. You know what he brings to the table, and he provides depth. He could play a tackle and he could play guard, so I think that that's very valuable. John Jenkins, even at age 34, I thought he had a good season for the Raiders. I would be interested in him coming back on the defensive side of things. Amik Robertson, he showed his worth. Every year I've tried to release him from the roster only to find out that, you know what, this dude is a playmaker. And I know that he doesn't make all the plays consistently, but as far as the cornerback depth goes, I think that'd be great to have him back. I don't know what he's looking for. He only made $947,000 last year, so I don't know what he's looking for as far as money, but would love to see Amik come back. And then Isaiah Palomau, like to see him come back. I think he's really started to come on. Really in training camp, I started to see that he had a knack for finding the ball. I think the Raiders really like him as a player. He's a 24-year-old dude, so he's young. He only made $787,000 last year, so I could definitely see them bringing him back. So really, those are the five I'm looking at for the Raiders: Jacobs, Illuminor, Jenkins, Robertson, and Palomau. And I mean, you'd like to bring back Andre James if you can, DeAndre Carter, Amir Abdullah. There's plenty of guys you could bring back, but they're not guys that are high priorities as far as I'm concerned. So outside of the organization, as the franchise tag window has now officially opened up, who am I looking at? I got 5 guys listed, and look, all these guys aren't going to be available. Matter of fact, these guys, I could easily see 3 out of 5 of these guys getting hit with the franchise tag by their respective teams. But I'm going to put them out there anyway. I was looking at the top 50 free agents. I even expanded to the top 200, and I still came up with these 5. Like, yeah, these are the guys that I'm really focused in on. Chris Jones, Chiefs defensive tackle. He's 29 years old. The estimated contract value would be about 3 years, $84.5 million, and that'd probably be a little bit low. He probably wants a little bit more than that. Free agency, you got to overpay. But in 2023, he played 16 games for the Chiefs in the regular season, 10.5 sacks, 4 passes defense. But we all saw him in the biggest game, the Super Bowl. We know how disruptive Chris Jones is. So if you can add him to the Raiders roster at maybe a 3-year deal, $84, $90 million, whatever the case may be, I'd be okay with that. I'd be really good with that. Just because you have him, you have Max, and then you'd have Tyree and still Malcolm Kuntz. I think that'd be something really – that'd be a big positive for the Raiders defense. Now, I'll say this. I'd rather Justin Madubuike from the Ravens. I'd rather him before Chris Jones. One, he's younger. He's only 26 years old. He had, played 17 games last year for Baltimore, had 13.5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. I don't see any way that they let him get out of town. I think that there's no doubt about it he's going to get hit with the franchise tag. But I threw him in there for S's and giggles because I think that he is a great player, and at 26 years old, he's really starting to come into his own. So I think that the Raiders would have a better opportunity to have him for 2 or 3 years where he's playing at a very high level as opposed to giving him a 3 or 4 year deal and he only plays good for a couple years, right? I think that, you would like to have him for a longer part of the contract. But Justin Madubuike would be a guy that I'm very interested in. And if they had to settle for Chris Jones, that's not a bad settle, right? And they have the cash in hand now to be able to go and get a guy, a big ticket free agent like a Chris Jones or a Madubuike or any of the other guys that I'm going to mention. And the third one, Jalen Johnson, Bears cornerback. He's only 24 years old. The estimated contract for him is about 5 years, $78.7 million. Probably be more than that. He played in 14 games in 2023, had 10 passes defense, 4 picks, a touchdown, and forced fumble. Now, 2 of those interceptions and a touchdown came against the Raiders, right? Those were Brian Hoyer specials where they just kept throwing that ball up there, and that was just a bad day. And, I know a lot of people still give me a bad time about picking Brian Hoyer for that one game. That was my bad. I said it then. That was my bad. And I'll say it again now, that was my bad. That was obviously a bad decision. He clearly had no position on the team. Shouldn't he wasn't able to go out there and beat the Bears, who were terrible at the time. Just one game, go beat the Bears, couldn't do it. So, yeah, that's my fault. But Jalen Johnson, I liked him a lot when he was coming out of college in the draft. He's a guy from the West Coast. He's a 5'9" guy. So he went to Central High School right there in Fresno. Would love to see Jalen Johnson compare, kind of teamed up with Jack Jones. I think that'd be a nice little pairing at the cornerback position. But that's, a guy that could and most likely will probably get franchise tagged by the Chicago Bears. Going back to the Kansas City Chiefs and sticking with the cornerback position, how about L'Jarius Sneed, 26 years old? They're estimating a 4-year, $47.5 million contract for him. He played in 16 games for Kansas City in the regular season, had 14 passes defense. He only had 2 interceptions, but 14 passes defense. He was sticky in coverage. I mean, he was real sticky. He was like, well, yeah, sticky. Let me just put it like that. It's a family show. He was sticky in coverage. He was a guy that was, he was tough to complete a pass on. And when they did complete a pass on him, like we saw with Baltimore, when Zay Flowers made that catch and then started talking some trash and then had that opportunity to score a touchdown, never gave up on the play and knocked the ball out, caused a huge fumble and a touchback, and Kansas City got the ball back. And that was big, right? So it just kind of shows you his mentality doesn't quit on play. So I could definitely see Sneed being a guy that's combined with Jack Jones, and that would be a nice 1-2 punch for the outside defensive backs for the silver and black. And finally, this guy is probably more of a luxury, not really a need, but Patrick Queen. We've been talking about Patrick Queen here on the show for 2 or 3 years now. It seems like he's been on the trade block with the Ravens, but he's been getting better and better each and every year. I like the man when he was coming out of LSU. He ends up in Baltimore, which, of course, he's a linebacker, so why wouldn't he? They're estimating he's only 24 years old, a 5-year, $92.5 million contract. 17 games he played in the regular season in 2023, 133 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 6 passes defense, an interception, and a forced fumble. He had a lot of production, and he played alongside Roquan Smith. Right, so that you want to talk about a 1-2 punch at the linebacker role. Now, I like Spillane a lot. I like what Diablo brings to the table a lot as well, but I think Patrick Queen would really set that linebacking core off if they were to bring him. But again, I feel like that's more of a luxury than a need. But those are the 5 that I'm looking at. No offensive guys. There was no offensive tackles that I looked at that I was real intrigued by, that I thought were guys that they can go out and get. Now, there's guys that are free agents that they can go get, but there was none that I looked at was like, yeah, that's the guy you got to go get. So really all on the defensive side of things. So that would mean that the Raiders could really focus their attention on the offensive side of things when it comes to the NFL draft. I would be fine with that. What says you? 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. NFL season, it's in the books. It's in the review mirror. Matter of fact, starting to prepare for the next season, right? Because the NFL never sleeps. But it is NBA time. The All-Star break is over. NBA action is going to get started up quicker than you know it. And you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins, just like that. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. You're guaranteed to miss the one that you don't take. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Raider Matt in the OC. He's calling with a crazy trade idea. His words, not mine. Here he is, Raider Matt in the OC.
What's up, Keith? This is Raider Matt calling from Orange County. Wanted to call in because I'm thinking of a crazy trade idea here and want to get your take on it. What if the Raiders trade Devontae Adams to the Jets or the Patriots and are able to leverage that trade with their first-round pick at 13 to trade up to like one of those top 3 spots to draft Jaden Daniels? AP recruited Daniels, recruited Jack Jones, and he also recruited Brandon Ayuk. Seems like Brandon Ayuk does not want to be in San Francisco, and coming to Vegas has been leaked around, I think, online. So what do you think about the Raiders trading Devontae, signing Ayuk, and using that trade with Devontae to leverage up a top 3 pick and draft Jaden Daniels? Might be a good idea. Might not. I don't know. Want to get your take. You appreciate you, man. Raider Matt out.
Raider Matt, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And it might not be that crazy of an idea after all, right? I think there's a strong possibility. I want no parts of trading Devontae Adams, no parts. I want that to be so clear because I guarantee someone's going to say, Q said to trade Devontae. No, no, no. I do not want anything to do with trading Devontae Adams, but I understand the price of doing business, right? And I realize that might happen. A nice plan B, top wide receiver would be Brandon Ayuk, like you mentioned, right? Of course, he's got ties with AP. AP could be putting together a whole team full of guys that he's familiar with, right? It wouldn't be the first time we've seen stuff like that. But Ayuk, I like him as a wide receiver. Obviously, he wants to get paid. That's what his problem with San Francisco is. He's still got a year left on his deal, and he wants to get paid, right? But he averaged almost 18 yards a catch in 2023. So that's a big-time playmaker. You combine him with Jacoby Myers, that could be a nice 1-2 punch, especially when Jacoby is a guy that's always been used to being the number one wide receiver, and with Devontae there, he's definitely not. He'll be the number two. I can see that pairing, but again, I want to make it clear, I am not for trading Devontae Adams. I just know what the price of business is, and to get your quarterback that you need, that might end up coming down to that. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see how it plays out. But again, that is not my intention. That is not what I would like to see happen. But Raider Matt, thanks for the call. And again, it might not be such a crazy idea after all. Up next, got a text from Alejandro from the 5 and Dime. That's a 510. It's Oakland, California. It says, Q, what up? This is my first time contacting the show. I've been listening every day for the past year, and I love it. Just curious, when are you going to have players on the show with you? I think that'd be awesome. The show is already great either way. Thank you for everything you do for the greatest nation on earth, Raider Nation. Alejandro from the Nickel and Dime, the 5 and Dime. And thanks for the text, my man. Appreciate you chiming in on the show and listening and supporting the show. And I'll have players on from time to time, right? Just whenever I get a chance to run into them, whenever some kind of availability comes up, anything like that. Whenever I get a former player or whatever on my radio show, I can never tell you when it's going to happen. I can never be like, oh well, on Wednesdays I'm going to start having players. Like it's hard, especially in the off season. It's hard to know when you're going to be able to have access to these players. Like during the regular season, it's great. Get locker room access, get access to them after the game. Like all that is right there, convenient. You know how it's going to go down. But during the off season, it's really difficult. And really, what my focus will be moving forward will really be prospects. I'll start having more guys that are going to be drafted, guys that I look at as potential Raiders. I'll start having them on the show just so you can get to know them and get to know about them. Start learning from people that cover them and stuff like that. That's what my focus will really be throughout the course of free agency and the draft season. Of course, the combine's coming up next week in Indianapolis. I'll be there, so get some some potential Raiders on the show then. So it's kind of fluid. I guess that's the easiest way to describe it. But thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Travis in the 619. He's calling to talk about the quarterback conversation as it pertains to Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Here's Travis in the 619.
Hey, Q, this is Travis from 619. I just wanted to jump in the quarterback conversation, especially regarding J.J. McCarthy. And I hear a lot of callers calling in talking about how they would draft him. And honestly, I think it's the biggest mistake they can possibly do. Let me just read off a few stats here. The last 6 or 7 games for McCarthy. Versus Penn State, he was 7 for 8, 60 yards. Maryland, 12 for 23, 141. Ohio State, 16 for 20, 148. Iowa, 22 for 30, 147. The only solid game versus Alabama, 17 for 27, barely eclipsed 200, 221, 3 touchdowns. And Washington, 10 for 18, 140. His whole time at Michigan, he's never thrown over 3,000 yards. Never. So, I don't get the hype on McCarthy. The dude had a talented team around him, and he still performed like an average college quarterback. So I don't understand the hype on him. I think drafting him would be a huge, huge mistake. And he just, is all based off the team he plays on, and that's where all his success comes from. And I look at somebody like Bo Nix and Michael Penix, and I can see the progression over time, even though they've been in college a longer time. You can see the progression with their stats, the passing yards, touchdown, passing percentage. Just look it up. Everything's on the internet. You can see them get better over time. But McCarthy, statistically, hasn't done anything. And his team has always been talented, and you don't draft a quarterback based off his success in college. but I'm talking about in terms of the team's statistical record, not his stats itself. So just look it up, man. McCarthy would be a reach. To me, he's a third-round grade. A third round. You got to get Michael Penix or Bo Nix. That's the only options you should do. So, yeah, anybody saying get McCarthy, I disagree with you. Watch the tape. Slow release. He's good for one or two good throws a game. But you expecting this guy to compete head-to-head with Mahomes? You're crazy. All right, Q, take care.
Thank you for the call, my man, and appreciate you. And, yeah, I mean, you know, the back and forth, and when it comes to the conversation about JJ, you know, I don't know. It's weird with him because as far as I'm concerned, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot at Michigan. You know, they're going to run first. And that's kind of what the argument is and the conversation is around him. Well, when he's asked to do more, he can do more. He just wasn't asked to do a whole lot. Now, is that true? I don't know. And we don't know because we haven't seen it. But that's what experts, and I say that in air quotes, that's what the experts say, that if he is actually asked to do a lot more, he can do a lot more. Only thing is he didn't do a lot more when he was at Michigan because they were a run-first team, and that's where they really, you know, just buttered their bread. So I understand the conversation. I understand what others are saying, and that's why I like to hear all sides of it just to kind of get my own ideas. When I don't know, if I haven't covered a guy myself, I don't want to just sit here and point the finger and say, yeah, I know that as a matter of fact. Some do. Some don't have any problem doing that. And a lot of times they're wrong, you know, and a lot of times people will never come back and say, you know what, I was wrong. But I like to hear all sides of it just because we really don't know. And so I've never seen J.J. McCarthy have to do more. But, you know, you bring up some good stats and, you know, that would definitely make you question that argument of when he's going to get drafted. Some say he'll be a first-round guy. Some say he'll be a later-round guy. Only time will tell, right? The end of April, we'll know for sure. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. Got a text from 00 Raider out of Chicago. It says, hey, Q, it's 00 Raider from Chicago. Thanks for all that you do for Raider Nation. You think it's possible that Jaden Daniels pulls the Eli Manning move and demands a trade to the Raiders? What are the chances if we can't move up and get him? Go Raiders. That's from 00 Raider out of Chicago. And I don't think so because the Raiders are picking at 13. And wherever he's going to get selected will probably be top 3. That's a big difference in money. I mean, think about that. If you get selected number 2 or number 3 overall as opposed to number 13 overall, that's a huge difference in money. So I'm sure that he wouldn't want to do that. Plus, that's a bad look anyway, right? I mean, if you get drafted by any team, there's only 32 teams in the National Football League. You get drafted by any of them, that's a blessing, right? That's not your right. That's like a privilege. You know, you're in such a great position. So I've never been a fan of guys that, you know, say I'm not going to play for that organization. I think these guys should be happy to play with any organization that drafts them, but I know I've never been in that position either. So, you know, so I can't say, well, when this happened to me it didn't. Never, no, I've never been drafted in anything. So there's that. I just don't think that that's going to happen. I think if the Raiders want Jaden Daniels in particular, they're going to have to go get Jaden Daniels and do everything that they see fit to go grab him. I think that's going to be the bottom line. But thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Got time for one more. We'll get a call from Raider Eddie in Denver. He's calling to talk about yesterday's price is not today's price. That's the convo that we had on Monday's show. Here he is, Raider Eddie in Denver.
Hey, Q, what's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. Hey, I want to piggyback on this conversation about the changing of prices on the day of the draft. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Absolutely agree. And what I'm thinking about with that is pick number 10 overall, right? So the Jets own pick number 10. Apparently they want Devontae Adams as well. But maybe at pick number 10, the Jets are thinking, you know, we've got a few guys in the draft. We've got 1 or 2 guys in the draft. That's who we want at 10. If those guys are not available at 10 on draft day, maybe we would be willing to trade with the Raiders, trade back to 13, give the Raiders 10, because if their players are not there, that pick doesn't hold the same value for them as it did when they expected that player or those 2 players to be there. So that pick could actually lose some value for them on draft day. Maybe they'd be willing to give us 10, trade down to 13, take our pick. And for me, this is a little sidebar, but I would love to give them Devontae Adams for pick number 10 because I think we can get J.J. McCarthy there at 10. I don't think J.J. McCarthy lasts very long in this draft. I don't think he gets past the Broncos at 12. The Broncos are in a terrible cap situation with all their issues with their signings and giving Russ, that big deal. They're in a terrible cap situation. So in my opinion, they want to get a quarterback in round one that they can have on a rookie deal for 5 years. They kind of need that kind of a move. I think they would take McCarthy if he was there at 12, so I want to jump ahead of them, jump to 10. A few different things there, but the price today is not the price that it was yesterday. That can be higher or lower based on changing expectations and how the draft unfolds. And then, like I said, the sidebar with McCarthy and at 10, who I like a lot. Anyway, Q, love your show and talk to you soon.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And look, I'll agree with you 100% when it comes to Denver. They definitely are going to grab a quarterback in the first round. Like, I have no doubt that they're going to grab a quarterback. And I think that they're going to try to put a monkey wrench into any plans that the Raiders have, right? So I don't think they're going to sit there at 12. I think they're going to try to move up and go get their guy. I just don't know who their guy is. If it's going to be J.J. McCarthy, it's going to be – then maybe they don't have to. Maybe they don't have to trade up to go get him. Maybe they stay there at 12. But I think that the Raiders definitely, to have their options open, are probably going to have to jump Denver for sure, because I do believe that they need a quarterback. As far as – as far as just trading up to number 10, I don't think that's the Raiders' goal, right? I don't think that the goal is to get to number 10 to select a guy. I think the goal is to make a big jump. Like, if you're going to go, right? Not a baby jump. If you're going to jump. I think if they're going to go, they're going to go 13-3, 13-2, hell, 13-1 to ensure that they get their guy. If that's in fact what they're going to do. If not, they might just sit there at 13 and let the board fall to them and then make their decisions then. And maybe they give a quarterback in the first round. Maybe they don't. But I don't see no baby steps. I think if they're going to go, I think they're going to be aggressive and absolutely go. But thank you so much for that call, Raider Eddie. I definitely appreciate that. Still got a text from North Texas Raider we'll get to on tomorrow's show. We'll have more calls in Texas. As a matter of fact, on tomorrow's show, we'll have plenty of news and notes as well and conversation as we're full throttle into the offseason. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.